The typical cost of a wedding in the United Kingdom ranges between £20,000 and £25,000. The bride's dress is also one of the most expensive items that will be purchased for the big day. Future bride or bride-to-be Jennifer Restudis was going to get married for the second time, and she decided to seek the assistance of the wedding dress experts on the show Say Yes to the Dress in order to select the ideal gown for her big day. Specifically, she was looking for a dress that was princess romantic in style, but she did not want the beads and the frills. She then went on to talk about a designer dress that she had seen and admired, which included a corset, dropped waist, and gathered skirt. Jennifer continued, simple, beautiful, elegant, and romantic about the subject, but a little bit of fairy tale princess as well. In response, the assistant to the dresser inquired, "Is there a budget?" In response, Jennifer stated, "In all honesty, there is no budget for the ideal dress under any circumstances. Nevertheless, I would really prefer to keep my expenses below $10,000, £7,760. As part of her statement to the camera, the future bride disclosed the individuals who will be responsible for paying for the dress. "My grandmother and grandfather will be purchasing the dress," she went on to say. "If I could find a dress that I loved so much that it cost $3,000, I would love that even more. In the event that I discovered the ideal dress, however, it cost $10,000, but it was the dress, would Grandma be okay with it?" Despite the fact that she would not be pleased with it, she would be okay with it. Lori, Jennifer's mother, shared her thoughts on the budget for the wedding dress, saying, "Her first wedding was very extravagant, and this is her second wedding, which I believe she needs to tone down. My family does well financially, but in today's economy, their businesses are really struggling." When Jennifer showed her family and friends the first gown, Randy stepped in to assist her. The dress assistant began pulling outfits for Jennifer to try on, and she was encouraged to try on each one. "How are we doing with regard to the price point? What am I able to spend?" Prior to hitting the racks, he inquired about the availability of additional gowns for Jennifer to try on. "My grandma and I have had certain conversations, and I knew if I really found a dress that was it, she would get it for me," Jennifer stated in response. However, this is not how Colleen, Jennifer's grandma, actually felt about the situation. She concluded by saying, "Jennifer and I haven't really talked about her budget, but it's important for her to think about her budget, especially during these economic times. My granny would pay for a dress that I really wanted if I found one that I really desired." Jennifer. The unfortunate reality is that Jennifer did not find a dress that she absolutely adored right off the rack. The alternative was that she desired to decorate and tweak particular design components in order to make her garment bespoke, and each modification contributed to the overall cost of the dress. A staggering $8,500, £6, $6K, was the total cost of the bride's gown when the dress assistant took into account the additional embellishments and adjustments that were made to the garment. Colleen was unable to allow her granddaughter to say yes to the dress on the spot under those circumstances because of the price. As an alternative, the family made the decision to go out to lunch in order to talk about the outfit. After, viewers were informed that Jennifer did not receive the bridal gown of her dreams. Instantaneously, individuals expressed their thoughts in the comments area of the post. It was said by one individual, "What a pampered brat." It was clear that she had little regard for her grandmother. Second wedding, she and her fiancé ought to be responsible for each and every expense. All of the parents and grandparents have already made a payment. The second person agreed. "She said this is a grown-up wedding, but I doubt it because she still hasn't grown up," a third person observed. The fact that she expects her grandmother to foot the bill for a costly outfit is evidence that she is self-centered. "I totally agree with her mother. This is her second wedding. When for the first already a fortune was spent, she needs to be on a low budget for the second wedding." Wedding stories, especially those that veer toward the bizarre, often make headlines, but every once in a while, a tale comes along that is so outrageous, it captures the imagination of the public for weeks. The latest viral incident involves a bratty bride who has sparked widespread outrage after demanding that her elderly grandmother pay £10,000 for her dream wedding dress, despite knowing her gran is financially struggling. The controversy first erupted when a video of the confrontation between the bride, her grandmother, and family members was posted on social media. What should have been a joyous, memorable moment in the lead-up to one of the most significant days of a person's life quickly turned into a viral spectacle of entitlement, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. The £10K dream dress, a luxury fantasy. It all began when the bride-to-be, let's call her Sarah, found her dream dress during a shopping trip to a high-end bridal boutique. The dress, a stunning couture creation from a renowned designer, boasted intricate lacework, hand-beaded embellishments, and a delicate silk train that flowed like a dream. The price tag, however, was equally as extravagant as the gown itself, £10,000. For many brides, a wedding dress represents more than just a garment. It's the symbol of a perfect day, a lifelong memory, and a chance to feel like royalty on one of the most significant days of their lives. But for Sarah, the dress wasn't just a representation of this fantasy, it had become an obsession. Her excitement quickly turned into entitlement as she grew increasingly determined to make her dream wedding dress a reality, regardless of the financial cost. The demands on family. Sarah's parents, while initially supportive of her wedding plans, were concerned about the eye-watering price of the dress. They knew that even with contributions from family members, £10,000 was an unrealistic amount for a single dress, especially in today's climate where many couples are already feeling the pinch from rising costs of living. But Sarah, who had always been a headstrong and sometimes demanding individual, refused to compromise. She wanted that dress, and nothing less would do. When her parents hesitated, she turned to an unexpected source. Her grandmother, a sweet but elderly woman who had struggled financially in recent years. Her grandmother, who lived on a modest pension and had recently been facing increased medical bills, was known to be a kind-hearted woman, always willing to help her family when she could. But even her doting nature couldn't prepare her for the confrontation that would unfold. The confrontation. It was during a family gathering, a casual Sunday lunch, when Sarah made her demand. She had been eagerly discussing her wedding plans, excitedly talking about everything from the venue to the flowers, but when it came time to discuss the dress, her tone shifted. She wasn't simply sharing her enthusiasm, she was issuing a command. With a smile that barely concealed the urgency of her request, Sarah turned to her grandmother and said, "Gran, I really need you to pay for my wedding dress. It's £10,000, and I know you can afford it. After all, you've always been so generous with everyone else, and this is my special day. I'm your granddaughter. You can't let me down now." Her words, coated in a veneer of sweetness, were starkly contrasted by the cruel implication behind them. It was clear that Sarah was not just asking for help, she was demanding it. And when her grandmother hesitated, unsure of how to respond, Sarah pressed on, her voice growing more insistent. "You've always told me to follow my dreams, and this is my dream dress," she continued. "If you really care about me, you'll do this for me. I can't imagine getting married in anything less." Her grandmother, visibly uncomfortable, looked around the table, hoping for support. But her family members, most of whom were equally stunned by Sarah's request, remained silent, unsure of how to intervene. It was a tense moment. The pressure was mounting, and it was clear that Sarah wasn't going to let go of her demand easily. The grand struggles and silent tears. As the conversation continued, it became clear that Sarah's grandmother had no idea how she could possibly come up with £10,000. She had already made significant sacrifices in her life to ensure that her family was taken care of, and her financial situation had been stretched thin for months. But Sarah seemed blind to these realities. "I know you've been struggling with your health and finances, Gran," Sarah said, her voice tinged with an almost condescending sympathy. "But I'm your granddaughter, and this is important. You can't say no to me. You've always been there for everyone else, and now it's my turn." Her words were a dagger. The guilt she was placing on her elderly grandmother was palpable. The older woman's eyes began to well up, not just because of the demand, but because of the realization that her granddaughter, whom she had helped raise, seemed to be taking her love and generosity for granted. I don't have that kind of money, Sarah," her grandmother replied softly, her voice quivering. "I've been struggling to make ends meet, and I don't want to disappoint you, but I just can't do it." But Sarah wasn't done. Her eyes flashed with impatience and her tone hardened. "Well, then I guess I'll have to find someone else who will. Maybe Mom and Dad will step up and pay for it. But honestly, I just don't get why you're making this so difficult." The family's reaction. Silent disbelief. The room was filled with a heavy silence. Sarah's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, but neither of them stepped in to diffuse the tension. The rest of the family looked on, unsure of how to react. It was a moment of awkwardness that seemed to stretch on for an eternity. For Sarah's grandmother, the emotional weight of the situation was becoming too much to bear. She had been through countless hardships in her life, but had always found a way to support her family, even when it meant sacrificing her own happiness. Now, faced with her granddaughter's selfish demands, she felt completely betrayed. "I've always loved you, Sarah," she whispered. "But this isn't love. This is manipulation. You've crossed a line." At that moment, Sarah's expression faltered. Perhaps for the first time, she realized the true weight of her actions. But instead of apologizing or backing down, she doubled down on her demands. "If you really loved me, Gran, you'd do this for me. You owe me." The fallout. A family torn apart. What followed was nothing short of heartbreaking. The emotional toll of Sarah's demand sent shockwaves through her family. Her grandmother, overwhelmed by the situation, excused herself from the table and retreated to her room. The rest of the family was left to stew in disbelief, with some members privately expressing their anger towards Sarah. Sarah's parents, in particular, were furious. They had spent years trying to teach Sarah the value of humility and selflessness, but it seemed like none of those lessons had stuck. When they confronted Sarah about her behavior, she responded defensively, refusing to apologize or admit that she had gone too far. "Why should I apologize?" Sarah snapped. "This is my wedding, my dream, and my special day. I've been planning this for months, and no one is going to ruin it for me, not even Gran." Her parents were left speechless, unsure of how to proceed. The rift between Sarah and her grandmother deepened as the days passed, and the tension surrounding the wedding plans only escalated. The public backlash. As word of the incident spread, social media users erupted in fury. The video of the confrontation went viral, with thousands of people expressing their shock and disbelief at Sarah's behavior. Many commentators slammed the bride for her entitled attitude, with some even calling her spoiled and selfish. "Grandmothers should be cherished, not manipulated," one commenter wrote. "Sarah's actions are beyond disgraceful. She should be ashamed of herself." Others speculated that Sarah had simply been caught up in the wedding fantasy and had lost sight of what truly mattered. "It's clear that Sarah isn't thinking about family or love, she's thinking about having the perfect wedding," another user commented. But at what cost? The backlash was swift and overwhelming. Even wedding vendors who had previously agreed to work with Sarah expressed their concerns, with some reconsidering their involvement after seeing the viral video. A wedding without love. As the day of Sarah's wedding approached, the tension continued to mount. The once joyful occasion had become a battleground of emotions, with family members torn between supporting the bride and standing up for what was right. Sarah's grandmother, still heartbroken, ultimately decided not to attend the wedding. In the end, Sarah wore her £10,000 dress, but the moment was far from the fairy tale she had imagined. The absence of her grandmother and the strain on her relationships with her family cast a shadow over the day. Her wedding may have been picture perfect, but the love and warmth that should have filled the occasion were sorely lacking. The aftermath. Lessons learned. In the weeks that followed, Sarah was left to reflect on the fallout from her actions. The grand gestures of her wedding seemed hollow, and her once close relationships with family members had been forever altered. While some family members attempted to reconcile with her, the damage had already been done. As for Sarah's grandmother,